A double kill for balls. A triple kill for
That's an
balls.
ace.
Holy cow. Kill for balls.
On today's show, we're talking about why we're here and what this is all about. We're recapping the top esports news, including major upsets at the LoL World Championship. We also have an interview with the Evil Geniuses Dota 2 squad who took the biggest prize in esports history. And finally, former pro gamer Snoopeh and the manager of EG's Dota team, Charlie, are here to talk about tournaments and player unions. This is Esports Weekly with Coca-Cola. What's up, everyone, and welcome to the set of Esports Weekly with Coca-Cola. I'm Kevin Naki, and I am so happy to have on my good friend AJ Mazer this week, our special guest host. Man, how you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. Thanks for bringing me along for the ride.
No problem, but why are we here? I mean, with millions of players around the world, competing for huge prize pools, there needs to be a place where all esports fans can come together and celebrate the entire scene.
And there's so many games, big and small. Our job is to deliver the best to you.
I mean, I love esports so much. You and I both used to work for this little esports league, which some people might remember, the IGN Pro League.
Yes.
So when IGN and Coke approached me to help design their new esports show, I couldn't be more excited. Coke has been such a longtime supporter of esports that they made the perfect partner to help make this happen. And now I get to produce the show I always wanted to see.
So every week, we'll be bringing you the greatest in esports and talk about the big issues.
I mean, we'll have the biggest names in the scene on to talk about real issues that actually matter. Because we believe what's good for esports is good for all of gaming. So we really want to get at the heart of what will help to continue grow esports over time.
And that involves you. So if there's an event you want to see us at or an issue needs to be tackled, we want to know. Be sure to hop into comments with your thoughts or a tweet with hashtag Esports Weekly, and we might just put your comment on the show.
So up first each week, we always have the Esports Weekly Refresh, which recaps you on the news that you need to know about in the world of esports. And AJ, we have to start with LoL Worlds. There's so many upsets over the weekend.
We absolutely do. Like, looking at the numbers so far, Cloud9 and Origin both 3-0 in their groups. And if you looked at the numbers going in the Worlds, this is not the expected outcome.
No, absolutely not. I mean, Cloud9 was a team that was one game away from the promotional series. They were not expected to do well, and they have completely turned it around. We even asked Wright directly about that, and Frank Field, senior editor for esports, had this to say: Cloud9's success is especially surprising, though the team looked incredibly strong in their wins in the North American Regional Gauntlet. They also had some pretty lopsided losses and barely made it to Worlds at all. We knew if they would have success, though, it would be on the backs of Sneaky and Incarnation, and that's exactly what's happened, and it's been a pleasure to watch them play.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think the players also have the perfect mentality going into Worlds as well. And Mithy from Origin even said, we play one game at a time, take it slow.
That's right, and they've been doing very well at that. So let's take a look at the brackets. Actually, we can see some of the rest of the results. Fnatic, the team that was supposed to be the best Western team, ends up only 1-2 up to this point. They can still turn it around, but things are tough. TSM down 1-2 as well. Yeah. Crowd favorites at all times.
Eternal crowd favorites.
That's absolutely right. SK Telecom, no surprise they're 3-0, but the circumstances behind it have been pretty cool. It's not just Faker carrying the team. The whole team has really stepped up and played well, and they've even defeated their rival Edward Gaming, who was supposed to really make it to the finals with them, as predicted by a lot of analysts.
And also talking about predictions too, LGD 0-3 in their group. They were expected to full-on sweep.
Yeah, they were expected to do really well. Unfortunately, not working out for them.
Yeah.
All right, into our second story. We have player unions once again on everyone's mind. Richard Lewis actually just released a leaked email from Navi CEO Alexander Kokanovsky, which basically said, hey, we're a collection of 10 teams. We're banding together to expect some rights at different tournaments. We're going to make sure that there's an expectation for certain amounts of prize pools, travel, accommodations, things like that.
And there's some very big team names on this list too. Team Liquid, CLG, Cloud9, TSM, Fnatic, even Ninjas of Pajamas.
Yeah, and this is largely being seen by everyone as a collection of the most powerful CSGO teams right now, because it does actually omit some of the bigger organizations that aren't involved in that game. However, we did reach out to Navi CEO, and Alex did confirm that he sent the email, but he also said that this is not a formalized union. It's just a group of 10 teams aligned with their vision of esports, but the amount of teams will increase in the near future. As of now, we don't have any negative feedback from tournament organizers.
Richard did report, though, that maybe perhaps the players weren't fully consulted on this.
Yeah, it's a little weird to me. It seems like this may be more of an effort by team ownership. It's not really filtering down to the players yet, so we'll see if their voices get heard in the coming days. Seems like leagues are okay with this, though. Ulrich Schulze, who's vice president of pro gaming over at ESL, said, and I quote, "We actually like the idea. For us, it's good that the players and teams start thinking about what they collectively want."
And this has been something in the works, something discussed in esports for a very long time, but you know what? This is a very good first step.
Absolutely. All right, so on to our third story. The EU Championships for the road to BlizzCon finals were actually over the weekend, and we had 3 games there: Heroes of the Storm, Hearthstone, and World of Warcraft.
World of Warcraft without Conan O'Brien.
Unfortunately, right?
Soon, maybe. But I cross my fingers.
But here's the cool thing about World of Warcraft. Solari Gaming, a very strong guild over there, actually had both their teams, their blue and red squad, make it into the finals, so they'll both be qualifying for BlizzCon.
Stack that bracket. Also, Na'Vi, undefeated in Heroes.
And of course, I was so happy about this. EU scene in Heroes is actually really hotly contested right now, and they went in with some very unconventional strategies. Their final team roster
This makes me so angry.
Was Abathur, Uther, Butcher, Falstad, Kerrigan, a triple assassin comp with just one strong healer, lots of stuns, and that nutso specialist Abathur behind.
I get so angry when I ever see an Abathur in my pub games. Like, I mean, I want to feel angry just on principle.
But I love playing Abathur, and they qualify along with Dignitas, who took second place in the event. Finally, in the Hearthstone finals, Tice actually ended up defeating Nyria 3-1 in the finals. 4 players do go to BlizzCon from the event, though, so 3rd and 4th place were Life Coach and Oskaka, so they're also going to qualify.
But Tice did have some choice words, specifically around banning in Hearthstone. Said, quote, "You will always have some cards that are a bit stronger than others, and over time, this gets frustrating." And you know, that's understandable, because you see games like League of Legends, Dota, where you have certain champions being banned, and also even comparing to other card games, Magic the Gathering, you had the sideboard to go into those situations where you may be at a disadvantage and help turn that around.
Yeah, and this has actually been something on the mind of a lot of players, as on social media, people have been quick to echo his comments.
Yeah.
All right, and moving on, we were at ESL 1 in New York over the weekend, a Dota 2 event at Madison Square Garden. We took the opportunity to actually talk to you, the players out there, to ask you why you love esports so much. We made a quick little video, actually, of our favorite answers, so take a look.
I really like it here. It's like you're surrounded by people that are just like you.
I don't know, just looking at the crowd sometimes, seeing like those are people like me, and it's just amazing.
You know, the energy is just great.
It is totally super freaking cool to be here at ESL New York.
It kind of brings this like online community. You kind of like really get to know people in a more personal sense than you would ever online.
It's an excuse to come to New York, and it's an excuse to hang out with a bunch of, people like me.
I actually meet people that I actually can relate, and I actually feel better about myself.
I can come and really enjoy a game with a ton of people. It's really cool to see just how big the hype is now around video games and esports.
Here at Esports Weekly, we really want to dive into the stories that you actually care about. So, we sat down with Evil Geniuses at ESL 1 in New York. This, of course, was the Dota 2 team that won TI5, claiming $6.6 million. That's actually the biggest prize in esports history.
And even though they won, EG is still not immune to the infamous post-international Dota shuffle.
Yeah, that's right. AUI ended up suddenly departing the team, much to his surprise, it seems like, as well. Arteezy rejoined from Team Secret. He was formerly an Evil Geniuses member, and he comes over as a hard carry player.
Yep, and with this new roster, though, they did get dropped out in the first round 0-2.
Yeah, that's right. They ended up losing to Vega Squadron, who would actually go on and win the entire ESL 1. But we did sit down with EG beforehand and ask them about Dota Majors and how strong the other Dota regions are right now. And we want to give a big shout out to Mount Dota, who actually really helped us out with securing and helping with these interviews. So check it out, guys.
After the International 5, many teams, including EG, had roster changes. Here's what EG had to say about the relative strength of North American and Chinese teams.
Well, North American Dota, I think people have always thought of it as kind of a big joke, and up until recently when EG started doing well, teams still weren't on that same level. But now I think with DC and C9 coming up, I think the American scene has a lot of potential. It's just a matter of what they can do with that. If they work hard and they do their best, I think they can go pretty far.
Teeman with the Death Ward in a fantastic spot. Starts slaughtering through all of them. It's going to be a triple kill for him. Brax gets a kill himself.
We have about 4 or 5, I can think of maybe even 6 teams that are just pretty good compared to the last few years where we had 1, maybe 2 at most. So the NA scene's getting a lot bigger and a lot stronger.
And now Secret before bed, the egg's gonna go up. They're blasting him with the Phoenix Ray.
I think the Chinese teams with the roster changes will always be strong. I don't know which team is gonna be good, but they always have these roster changes at the end of the season. And they always come up with a top team every single time, and I don't expect this year to be an exception. I think C9 has proven that they're probably the best team in North America. We haven't played against them yet in a competitive game, but they're the team we're looking out for in North America.
He does go down regardless, and one by one they begin to crumble. Cloud9 able to grab on. Nice hook shot follow-up, roll forward.
The one thing that all the other teams don't have that C9 has, in my opinion, is like sort of a person to unite with, like Thebe and T-God 1437. People like unite under him and feel good when they're playing under him, so that's good to have.
The last remnant just barely takes him down, but was it worth it?
The major system will create a lot more stability and force players to kind of commit to teams and commit to learning rather than kind of jumping ship at the first signs of difficulty.
And it's just having more tournaments like DAC and stuff like that just motivates people to just like try harder throughout the whole year and keep, you know, the same roster instead of just like flipping their roster like in the middle of the year. And we've got a whole year, like screw it, let's just scrap our roster and try something new. So it's good to just have more stability in this team.
And welcome to the heart of Esports Weekly, the roundtable where we have on the biggest personalities from esports talk about issues that really affect the entire scene. On today's show, we have two very special guests. We have Evil Genius's Dota 2 manager, Charlie. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Charlie.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm going to make a Dota team with Snoopeh.
Oh, that's beautiful. And of course, we have former pro gamer Snoopeh with us as well. How are you doing, man? Well, now that you're announcing you're part of this Dota team.
I thought we were going to do Counter-Strike. I wanted to
Oh, that's right. That's right. We're going to do Counter-Strike.
Just skip all of that. Just go straight to Rocket League. It's fine.
Charlie's obviously one-track mind. So what are we here to talk about tonight, guys? Well, of course, we want to discuss tournament stability within the esports scene. Now, of course, there are many different games, many different structures that are out there right now. LCS has a very conventional sports league style double relegation system, 2 tiers in their leagues. They can introduce new blood through their Challenger series. It all kind of culminates in a big playoffs at the end of the year in the form of Worlds. Valve, up to this point, has been very different with the way they've approached their games. They're starting to introduce a series of majors to go along with like big marquee blowout events during the year. Blizzard kind of has games around the clock and players just accumulate points so they can get themselves to BlizzCon.
Then there's even still the fighting games who still do all of their events all over the world, and also to the new upstarts like the aforementioned Rocket League.
Right, and so the question that I have at first is, what infrastructure do leagues really need to kind of build up support and allow teams to flourish and kind of have a little bit of stability?
I think if I was going to say it's basically, as you said, stability. Like, how can we create stability? And I think that stability and consistency is one of the most important things. Looking at one example, which is Dota, doing one event at the end of the year, I don't think is great for the scene. I think it puts on a great spectacle towards the end of the year, but it needs to be more consistent if you're going to ask players to choose this as a career path. And then also from a broadcasting point of view and spectator point of view, I think it makes more sense to be spread out throughout the year.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Valve has realized that as well to some degree. They've obviously just recently introduced a series of majors, and these are huge events worldwide. I mean, their base prize pools rival that of the international. They're actually bigger in a lot of circumstances. So do you think that trend's going to continue? I mean, especially to you, Charlie. Like, were we going to see more of these official, like, Valve-sponsored tournaments?
I think you'll probably see them sticking with this structure for a while, these 3 majors plus the international. And I do agree with what Steven said, that one event at the end, one massive event at the end of the year can be very destabilizing. This is something that a lot of the professionals within the scene had talked about and had been a concern for them for a while. You spend your entire year working up for this one tournament, and if you don't make it, well, then you're kind of out of luck. Or if you do poorly at it, it's your entire year sort of just goes to nothing, and you have really nothing to show for it.
Yeah, and it's also just not just Dota here, because they also have other games, believe it or not. You know, I still know that some people in Counter-Strike scene are like, where's our international?
I think they be careful, like, don't bite off more than they can chew. It'd be hard for Valve's a very small company, a very nimble and agile company. Sure, they have a lot of money, but at the same time, if they want to keep the same level of production and same level of intimacy that they've done so far with Dota, spreading that into doing it for TF2, doing that for Counter-Strike as well, I think you should try to implement the first structure, which is going to be Dota. And they're doing some CS majors with partners as well throughout the year. And I think that's a great step towards a system they're trying to identify as better than the current one.
Yeah. So I think that we're kind of dancing around a point here, which is that prize pool may not necessarily guarantee stability in a scene. Obviously, the international, it just dwarfs every other prize pool that's out there. I mean, you guys took on, what, $6.6 million for taking first or something like that? It's a pretty big number to throw around, right?
Yeah. It's a modest prize.
Yeah, not bad, not bad. Well done. Obviously, there's a lot lower prize pool in LCS, but they guarantee player salaries. It's more of an organized sports structure. So does prize pool really have anything to do with stability at all?
I think it does. I mean, obviously, you don't want to be playing for something very small, but I think there's a give and take with I guess the bulk of your money being in a large prize pool at the end of the year. One, it creates a lot of hype. It creates a lot of mainstream media attention. It's sort of like this one-off event to really draw a lot of attention in, and then in the subsequent year, you can really build off of that. On the flip side, if all your bulk is in that 1 year, and the scene becomes very top-heavy. The Dota 2 model, it's still very much like this, even with the major system, is that it's very bimodal. As a Dota 2 pro, you either make a lot or you make very little. There's not a lot of in between. So I do like what Riot's done with the LCS. It's very consistent. They pay all their players a livable wage. There's a way for you to become a professional through the challenger scene. So it is very stable. I do think there are drawbacks with that, though.
But I think in general, as Charlie was touching on, the good thing about League of Legends is that you get the opportunity, even if you're not the very best, you can make a living. You can justify saying, I want to be a professional gamer. Because the Dota, if you're not the very best, that's a really huge commitment to say, I'm not going to go to school and I'm going to play video games for a living, but I'm only going to make, well, I mean, I don't know how much the Dota salaries are, but a lower tier salary is going to make like
minimum wage.
Yeah, like $15,000 a year. Like, you cannot justify that as a kid when you're making that decision. And I think that's what structure and stability and something closer to the Riot structure really enables. It allows kids to make that conscious decision saying, I want to be a professional gamer. I can justify taking a couple of years out of university because there's a legitimate, stable career path here if I go down this route. To touch on that, Kevin, you're saying if we were to move to a franchise system and we did away with the Challenger series, essentially, what would happen? I think it would be much more attractive for non-endemic brands to come into this space because there is consistency. They know that if they sponsor this team for 3 years, this team is going to actually be in the league for 3 years. Mm-hmm. Right now, it's if I'm a Coca-Cola or if I'm another bigger brand, like whether it's like AT&T or one of these big brands, if I was going to sponsor Evil Geniuses, League of Legends team, if they had one, if I was going to sponsor them, I don't know if they're going to be in it 6 months later or 4 months later. So why would I do like a 3-year-long deal with them and I might not actually have them in the game I want them to be in? Yeah. So I think that level of consistency is really good for the non-endemic brands that are looking at this space, and we may want that kind of system.
Yeah. And I think that's a fair point, especially because, you know, other sports, you have those marquee franchises, and they feed into their new blood through their own organization. Yeah. So baseball teams have minor league systems. You have the NBA Development League across the world. You have players that come from these other minor leagues and stuff like that.
Collegiate scene as well.
Exactly, right. So there are potentials to move in with new blood there. So I think that's certainly very important, but now, this probably begs a larger question, though, which is once players are being forced through these franchises, through these marquee organizations that have proven themselves to be stable, there's not going to be much of a voice for the player, and it's mostly going to be there for the team. And in fact, this week we had Navi CEO just distribute a message on behalf of 10 major esports teams saying that, hey, we have some demands for tournaments, we want to try and organize. So let's talk about that a little bit and just player organization in general. Does that become more important under that franchise system that you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think it becomes incredibly important. I think it's already important that players find a way to collectively bargain in a sense. Not necessarily unionize. I don't think we're quite ready for like full unionization. And even the thing that Navi's order came out with the 10 teams, I don't think that's necessarily a union. It's almost like a business partnership in a sense, where they're advocating on certain things. What was really funny about that is they're doing things for the players, apparently. I mean, they're setting all these rules and procedures for players, but never consulted any of the players. Apparently they maybe spoke to a few, but not like the amount of people that impacted.
And we did reach out to Alex from Navi, and he did make it very clear that, like you said, this is an unofficial, this isn't like a true union, this is just a partnership, and they are advocating on behalf of players. But you're right, a lot of players were not contacted about this, which you know really asks, is this the team ownership interests that are at heart here, or is this really what's best for players?
I think this is absolutely the team ownership's interests at heart. If you look at the list of the demands, a lot of it has to do with cutting costs on their side. And then there's the argument to be made, though, that if you cut costs on the team side, some of that trickles down to the player side. But I think that's honestly a little naive.
Very naive.
I think I think once that happens, let's say team owners, they cut costs on their side. Tournaments pay for travel, tournaments pay for this or whatever. And the teams have more money to play around with. And a player will go to your owner and say, can you pay me more? You have more money now. And the team owner might say, just come back and say, just because I have more money doesn't make you worth more money. So there's no guarantee that trickles down. There's no guarantee that the players see any of that benefit. There's no guarantee that any of their interests are really represented here.
I think essentially we need some form of governing body on the entire industry.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who is like an independent adjudicator that helps all of these parties come together. So I want all the tournaments speaking to all the tournaments. I want the tournaments then speaking with all the developers. I want the players speaking together, and I want all the players speaking to the tournaments, and basically having some form of representation from each party and having them all talk together.
So who ultimately, though, has the authority to pull something like that together in such like a decentralized scene as we've been talking about, especially given what you were saying, just a second ago, Charlie?
Right now, nobody.
Nope. Yeah. So no one has the authority.
Uh-huh.
But every single one of us, we've seen people in this industry for 10, 20 years, right? It takes those people that are still in a position of power. So it takes your Navi owners, it takes your Twitch, the people at Twitch, it takes your people at Riot, it takes your people at Blizzard, it takes them all to say, like, we love this industry and we want it to grow, so we have to work together. It just takes all of them to have that kind of realization and to step back and say, like, if I really want to further this industry, we just have to collaborate.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. I think that something like that, if we could achieve the ideal version of that, that would be great. That would be, it would push us forward a lot. But I don't see that happening.
Yeah, well,
I mean, like you talked about it, like it requires people from Twitch, people from ESL, the Navi owners, the team owners, everybody to sort of come together and be very selfless with their intentions. And I think, like to speak to the sort of darker, seedier side of esports, you're not going to see that. If you look at it, I know you've seen it. Like the way things develop, the way things develop in this scene,
right,
are done with the intention of, I'm going to grow my own business. I'm going to grow my own bottom line.
That's inherently the problem, though, right? Because,
right.
like as you were saying before, we are iterating, and like that's kind of the method right now. We're figuring things out as we go along, and I think that's fine. Except for the fact that we now have close to $1 billion a year that's going to be poured into the scene very soon. And when you have that kind of money going around, you gotta think.
I think you do. Yeah. You do have to think that way. But I think it's a very select few people that think that way, and not enough.
That's fine. Those people just have to act on that.
They've also got to be. I agree. They have to be the right people in the right positions. I think. I mean, I think we would all love that, but I think
we'd all love it, so I'll give another proposition, right?
Okay.
So I'm just firing out all the propositions.
Go for it. I like it. I love it.
So
just go for it.
If we can't get them all to work together, let's just get them all talking. So there's events that happen.
This has happened before.
That's my point.
This has happened many times before.
But just look at small events, right? Like esports, like the industry is obviously revolutionizing and changing, right? The more occurrences where we get a large amount of the authority or people of power within esports together. Esports Conference was a great example of that. Atlanta, when they were all out there for Turner and speaking about that, great opportunity to talk about the future of the industry. Having more situations like that where they're talking, a lot of good comes out of that.
But what will ever be the impetus to force them to do that, though? Is it just the money is going to get too big? They have to start talking at some point? Yeah. I mean, what takes someone out of their own interest of their own organization?
Because then collectively, they can, like, if the pie's getting bigger, right, they obviously have to work out how they're going to get part of that pie. And you can see organizations like Cloud9 and TSM have obviously developed a very strong relationship. And Team Liquid as well is kind of part of that. And when they go out and reach the sponsors, like HTC, for example, they're doing collective deals. And that's them collaborating, right? It's kind of, I'm a little bit apprehensive to say that's the optimal solution, because then you're kind of alienating some other people. But that's a start, is like where they're starting to work together and pitch themselves and collaborate in terms of furthering the scene, bringing more non-endemics in, It's part of the solution, but it's definitely not anywhere near the full solution.
So I think like forcing or somehow waiting for an opportunity to where this is no longer avoidable. You know, we kind of waiting for the doomsday situation. Like the meteor is about to crash into Earth. Like now it's finally time. Let's get everybody together.
I think it's more about the money at the end of the day, less the tournament structure or anything. It's the money that's going to talk it, honestly.
Yeah.
So when we see, and even expertise, traditional sports is starting to come into this space. Like we're seeing ESPN, we're seeing Turner broadcasting, we're seeing a lot of like sports personalities, and then even team owners in the NBA are starting to invest in esports.
Yeah.
As they come in, if we don't, as people that love this industry and really passionate about this industry, get together and try and shape the future of the space, they're going to come in, they're going to do it for us.
Yeah.
And they're going to take ownership over what esports is going to look like in the next 10, 15 years. And I think it's on ourselves to realize that all this money is coming in. If we want to shape the industry that we love, then we're going to have to start acting a little bit selflessly and work together. And maybe that takes us like 5 people that think this way to actually start trend setting.
Sure. My point is that it's always going to be an us versus them mentality when like in this space, and it always has been. Whether that us is players together and team owners being the them, or all of us being the us and non-endemics, like
I'd much rather that. I'd much rather that.
Either way, there's always going to be a sort of us versus them in this space, and I think for everybody to sort of collectively come and make a governing body,
so
I'd love it, but
it's the eternal pessimist in you that's going to prevent change.
but let's talk about what it would actually take to bring people to the table and actually get people to start discussing that stuff. I would assume that on some level there has to be a financial case made for if you collaborate and work together and establish this sort of an organizing body, you can actually collectively grow the scene more. Do you think that an organizational structure like that actually helps and benefits and can create better investment for the scene overall?
Yes, I mean without a doubt.
Yes, absolutely. But it's going to take
2 years of slowed growth and everything else.
Maybe more than that, because people, in order for people to come together and form an organizing body, these people are also going to have to give up pieces of their own power.
Yeah.
They're going to have to give up certain parts of their own sphere of influence, and they're going to have to submit themselves to this governing body.
Yeah, but then I'll also come back to support and infrastructure. Like, sure, League has a great stability and it's consistent, right? But the infrastructure and support around these players is still very, very ineffective. Their training, the way in which they train is really ineffective. And I think as we see traditional sports, like coaches and personality and experience coming into this space, and there's not a direct, like you can't emulate it directly, but there's things you can learn. And we start instilling that in the practice environment of teams. I think it's going to gradually increase the shelf life of these players. And it's all about money as well. Like a lot more money comes in. I think gradually players' shelf lives will increase.
And I think we've seen that even just to draw the example from last weekend at Worlds, we saw a couple of veteran players from the West, XPK and High, really step up and show that veterans are still viable in the scene, that they've been there for a while and things like that.
I think Elimination's like 37 or whatever he is now. I don't know. He's
something like that.
Yeah,
so.
I think he's probably 24, but it's
All right, guys. Well, that wraps up our conversation for this week, and we do very much appreciate you guys for being on. Thank you so much. We do want to let you guys know, though, that we are going to have an extended cut of this roundtable that will be coming out later on in the week, so make sure you check it out. But for all of us here at Esports Weekly, this is going to be our show. We really want to hear from you, though, to see what you guys want to see us cover. So please do hit us up on Twitter, #Esports Weekly, or drop a comment on this video with the kind of things that you want to see. Have a great night, and we'll see you next week.